Hello, everybody. So amazing to see this group of people here. We have a wonderful collection of panelists who will be speaking to us on the future of investments, philanthropic leaders, accelerators, managers, and investment fund managers. So we have an exciting discussion, and welcome to all of our panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As mentioned, my name is Tono Baze. I'm Chief of Staff and Investor at Harlem Capital, and I'd like to take a brief moment to welcome all of our panelists. First, we have Marlon Nichols, who is the founding and managing partner of Mac Venture Capital. We have Melissa Brady, the co-founder of Eureka, one of her many, many talents and achievements, amongst others. We have Naja Roberts, the CEO and Chief Visionary Officer of Crypto Blockchain Plug. And lastly, we have Martina Welkoff of the WXR Fund, which is focused on the future of AR, VR, and everything in the metaverse. Thank you so much for joining us today, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Great to be here. Thanks.
So we're going to start with a quick intro and ask all of the panelists just to give us a little insight into their careers and what their everyday looks like. So we're going to go around the room, and I'm going to ask you all to summarize your job description in one line, which I know will be really difficult, and then tell me a story about the journey on how you got there. I think we can go ahead and start with Naja.
Thank you very much again for having me today. My name is Naja Roberts, and I am a Chief Visionary Officer. And the reason I say Chief Visionary Officer is because you have to have a really big vision to really get involved with the cryptocurrency community that is unable to get into the traditional cryptocurrency market. So I tell everybody I'm building Silicon Hoods. What we don't recognize is that there's 65 million people here in the United States that are unbanked or underbanked. And so we have to get them into this ecosystem. And so that's our job. So we've had to have a big vision to get this done.
Really exciting. Thank you so much for sharing. We'll move over to Martina. If you could tell us about your job description and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Thank you so much. So my one-line job description is sourcing excellent companies, investing in them, and supporting them, to boil it down. And I am very much an entrepreneur at heart. I came to venture via the founder journey. I started 2 companies prior to this in mobile gaming and a VR studio. And, I just really felt called to direct resources to underrepresented founders because of my own experiences and what I was seeing around me and the disparities in the venture capital world. And so decided to raise a venture fund a few years ago, not having any clue just how difficult it would be, but was the best decision of my life.
So glad to hear it, and we're glad to have you as part of the community. We'll move over to Marlon. If you could tell us a little bit about your day job and also the journey that you took to get there.
Yeah, very similar to Martina. I try to find incredible founders building amazing companies, invest in them, and help them to create those ideas or turn those ideas into amazing, profitable companies. My background, I've had a 22-year career in venture and technology. The first half was split evenly between operating, helped grow a company into Europe and then sold it. And then the second half of that first half was in consulting, first post M&A integration work, and then strategy consulting on the media and entertainment side. And then I started my venture career at Intel Capital, 5 years there, and then decided to leave and start my first fund, which is called Cross Culture. We merged Cross Culture with another fund called M Ventures to create MAC, M Ventures and Cross Culture. And we're now investing out of our second fund, MAC branded fund.
Very creative on the naming front. And we'll wrap up with Melissa. If you could tell us a little bit about what you're currently doing today and the journey you took and the things that got you there.
Sure. Well, honored to be here with such amazing people. My tagline is one goal and many roles. So I have multiple roles right now, but my primary goal is to help what I call new majority entrepreneurs scale and grow businesses to bring economic parity to our communities. I serve as a professor at Georgetown University McDonough School of Business for graduate students. I am the co-founder of Eureka, which is a small business tech platform, and I am general partner of 1863 Ventures based in DC.
One goal and many roles. Honestly, I think all of us may have to start using that one because I'm sure everybody on this panel has multiple positions that they serve in. And I think what really unites all of us is that we're using those positions to impact communities and to center diversity. So thank you all for the work that you've done. We're going to kick off with a question for Melissa. When you think about Eureka and we're in the digital world, I want to talk to you about how the digital world is impacting communities. So throughout the pandemic, of course, we've been living in a remote world, and COVID has disproportionately affected communities of color. But there's also been talk about the fact that doing business virtually can actually help level the playing field for diverse professionals, especially in terms of founders and investors raising capital. So I would love to hear your perspective and experience on how living in a more remote world has benefited diverse communities or even impacted them negatively.
Yeah, so from the Eureka's perspective, we are a platform that provides coaching, content, and community to entrepreneurs with specific focus on women and entrepreneurs of color. Of our over 18,000 members on the platform, we know that this access to digital actually allowed over 90% of them to survive because they had an online presence. They figured out how to move and pivot quickly from offline to online sales. They were able to overcome, for the most part, some of the hurdles and challenges around algorithms, et cetera, as they were using images of Black and brown people to make sure that they did not get filtered out. But they also got caught up as places like Facebook and others changed the algorithms and changed how things could happen, and they did not make them aware, and the patch is just not that easy. And so we find, at least amongst our entrepreneurs, that they have been able to successfully leverage technology, and in some cases it's allowed them to advance their business because it's reduced overhead costs, it's allowed them to improve their margins, and it's expanded their customer base, which ordinarily would have been maybe at a retail store or some other kind of distribution channel, which served as an intermediary. I think, however, they can only do as much as they have access to. And so financially, their internal investment in the use of technology around database management and CRM systems is limited because those are sunk costs that most investors don't want to talk about and don't necessarily want to support. And so for some of them, that scale and growth around data management has been slow. And I would say, at least for our entrepreneurs, less than 20% of all Black businesses right now, we know it's growing, are tech companies. And so the majority of businesses I'm speaking out about tend to be CPG companies, healthcare, ed tech, beauty products, health. And so, having access to data and managing lots of customers and multiple supply chains is pretty critical. So I think they have done well and leveraged that, but certainly still incur bias. If I look at it through our portfolio lens from an 1863 Ventures perspective, I would say we've had a 95% success rate post-COVID because of their, I'd say, pre-COVID understanding of the importance of being in digital, whether that is internal management and something as small as making sure that all documents are signed via DocuSign and making sure that those are set up all the way up to how do I now master these multiple channels of social media and other things to deliver content so I can actually have client conversion. So I think for the most part, we've made it there. I want to defer because I will say we see lots of challenges, but I want to defer to more crypto and metaverse experts because we know as that world expands that there is bias. I will say that we still have conversations, unfortunately, with our entrepreneurs of, do I put my picture up there? Do I want my picture up there? Can I what is the overload of how many Black images, knowing that I need multiple customers if I want to see myself in a more traditional retail channel? So I would say, in summary, they have used it well, but they are mindful of some of the ongoing challenges and persistent bias of how do they expand their growth when we start talking about the metaverse, and how do they manage that from a marketing perspective moving forward.
Thank you so much, Melissa. I think one of the most beautiful things about diverse founders and entrepreneurs is their ability to take adversity and really turn that into a catalyst and motivation. But you were right to point out the nuance that all exists within the larger environment and how much it's supporting them. So we will be getting to both Martina and Naja to speak a little bit about the biases in the digital futures that we're seeing. But before we go there, I think one population that has really spoken about the way that the digital future has helped them break into the venture space has been the African community. And I know, Marlon, you have a number of African investments, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the opportunity in the space. There's been new startups budding up in Africa, more capital going there from US investors, and I think many more people of the diaspora returning to Africa to engage with the community. So from your perspective as an investor, how have you been approaching learning the new environment and also opportunities in the new markets in Africa?
Yeah, I want to say 6 years ago. I made my first investment into a Kenya-based company. and started learning about the ecosystem there. But it took a while after that before making the second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth African investments. And what happened was in Mac Fund One, we were fortunate to meet a Nigeria-based investor that basically, took us under his wing and introduced us to the ecosystem, and also helps us to vet opportunities as we see them. They just have a much better and a way more grounded view of what's happening there because they're in it. So it's always good to go into something when you got a Sherpa. So that's helpful. But generally speaking, Africa I think is the youngest population in the world, right? Average age is 18 or 19. They're tech forward, mobile first, mobile only, actually. And it's such a closed ecosystem. It's weird to say closed ecosystem because it's an entire continent. But once something happens there and it starts to pick up steam, it's very difficult to dethrone or hurt that momentum. So, which is what you've seen, I think, with a lot of the fintechs that are coming out of Nigeria specifically, right? They're not doing anything different from the fintechs in the U.S. per se, but the population is so sticky, right? The customer base is so sticky that the only way that you're gonna be able to play in that market if they start there first and pick up traction is to buy or partner, right? And so that's what we're seeing. So all of those reasons, for all of those reasons, it's and then the price, right? So we're seeing at the early stage where I play Series Seed, you see reasonable, kind of expectations from entrepreneurs for the point in time, where they're at, where they're playing. So you can, it's almost like rewinding the clock and going back to the good old days where valuations were reasonable at the seed and Series A stage. So yeah, so those are the reasons. And then I think there's some challenges that are very specific, particularly in around digital health, that if they can solve it for one country in Africa, they can essentially solve it for many countries in Africa. We've got a portfolio company right now, Fire Recode, that's launched in 4 countries all at the same time, right? Because they're bringing this digital health solution that just makes sense across the board. So yeah, that's kind of rambling now, but that's my take on Africa. Very, very bullish.
Thank you so much. I mean, I saw so many synergies between your response and Melissa's in terms of the partnerships that are necessary, whether it's between entrepreneurs and the people supporting them, or whether it's between investors. And I think partnerships are essentially very essential when you're entering new spaces, which I think transitions us really well to speaking to Martina, who, I mean, your fund is all about the future. It's all about what's coming next. It's all about where we're building into, especially in terms of AR and VR. So as we build more in the VR, AR, and AI space, is there a way that we protect from the biases and disparities that we see in our present world from entering this new environment, virtual environment that we're creating?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It's a big part of, it's really the core motivator for us existing as a fund. As Melissa rightly pointed out, there's a lot of risk of the same old patterns and the same old bias being repeated in the numbers. I think there's a lot of promise, and that's been talked about, and I believe in that clearly. I'm in the space for a new way of thinking, not just about the technology, but about the culture that surrounds it, the leadership, the norms and funding. I think we can disrupt that in a more meaningful way at the foundational level in these nascent stages than in the years ahead when things are solidified and we have to sort of retroactively correct for what we've seen happen in other tech cycles, the disparity and injustices there. However, that's not going to happen without applied energy and intention, and most importantly, in my mind, capital flowing to the creators, to the founders, to the underrepresented founders that can really build the products and build the businesses that ultimately shape what the industry looks like. And so I think there's some really important conversations happening on the policy side. There's some great conversations and research being done around the ethics of the space, and all of that is important. But unless we couple that with capital flowing to diverse founders, to people of color, to women, and supporting their businesses at every stage to grow and scale in a meaningful way, I think a lot of those conversations will fall short. And so funds like Melissa's, funds like Marlon's are so important, the work we're doing at WXR as well, to make sure that those founders who are building excellent companies and coming from different communities, coming from different perspectives than the white male companies we see funded most often, have access to resources. And that also goes for tools. I think capital is a big part of that, but accessibility around the tools that folks are using to build these products is also really important. And a couple quick examples from our portfolio, Shapes XR is a very accessible tool to start building three-dimensional environments and to start collaborating across geographies. It's all virtual. And it, again, to Melissa's point about kind of that foundation in understanding how to build businesses virtually, I think there's tremendous opportunity to unlock there. And another one of our companies, Scatter, is trying to democratize volumetric filmmaking. So being able to create volumetric content at a much lower cost, at a much more accessible level. And they're also producing content like The Changing Same, which won the Tribeca Immersive Narrative last year and is about historical injustices with Afro futurism and magical realism woven in. Just really beautiful story told by people of color. And I think that's an important component of all of this as well, is making sure that those stories, making sure that those communities are represented at every level of this foundation. And then just to reiterate and make sure that the capital flows to support those efforts.
Thank you so much, Martina. I think you said it best. Capital really creates impact, and we're all here because we believe that. And I think some of the things that you also pointed out was the fact that when you back diverse founders, they often build inclusive businesses regardless of what industry they're building in. One of the things we say at Harlem Capital is that we're industry agnostic because we genuinely believe that the diversity and the inclusivity will flow through to the end customer, regardless of where a diverse founder decides to build. And largely, I think the most important nuance that you pointed out is that we can all have faith in the industry. I mean, I have a lot of hope from the diversity of the people on this screen, but without capital and without action and without work, that faith and that hope and these discussions will not go anywhere. And I think this is a great segue to our Chief Visionary Officer, who's building in the future and hopefully envisioning a much more equitable future for all of us. I would love to talk to you about equitable wealth generation, because I think at the core, that is something that unites everybody on this screen. There's been a lot of discussion around crypto and blockchain and its ability to empower diverse communities to lower the barriers to entry. But when we think about the number of people who are underbanked in Africa, who are underbanked in America, we really want to take a step back and make sure that there's access and opportunity for everyone. So what steps do you think are necessary for diverse communities to be able to take advantage of the wealth generation in the crypto and the blockchain space? And if you can also speak to what steps do you think need to be done by the community, but what steps do you think need to be done by the people who are creating these ecosystems?
Thank you very much for that question. So I find myself in a very unique space, and I just want to thank all of you for ensuring that money is flowing to diverse companies to make some things happen. I'm in a unique space because I've been an entrepreneur for 26 years, and for the very first time, I actually opened a company called Crypto Blockchain Plug that was not really centered around, and I don't want to say it like this because we definitely need money, but it was not based on monetization of the community. And the reason I say that is because we have this brick and mortar cryptocurrency exchange. You have the digital space, and you also have the folks on the ground, the people that, yes, they have access to cell phones, but they're doing a lot of the wrong things in the space because they're not learning. And so we were opening up this space thinking that everybody was going to run to us to get this information so that they could do these things correctly, so that they wouldn't be scammed. It's just all these other barriers that are happening, only to find out that people aren't willing to pay for a service that they don't think that they need. So I'm going to just say that first. So what we had to do was come back and figure out how we best serve our community that is into the cryptocurrency and the blockchain, but they have no idea what the terminology is. They're just doing it because the person next door said to do it and kind of getting involved that way. And so what we started doing is really buckling down the last 2 or 3 years to make sure that we actually had a model, almost like a McDonald's, that we could pick up and put in every single inner city across the United States, because our community is not getting it. And while the money can flow and do all those things, if the money flows through our community and goes right back to individuals who don't care about our community, then we're back at a disadvantage. And so what needs to happen is, I really feel like what we've been doing is making sure that we're hands-on with the community, that we have boots on the ground, that we are also really understanding the key issues around mindset of our community, because they can get involved in all these things, the metaverse, NFTs, all these things, and then find themselves back where we are today, which is only less than 1% of the wealth. And so we've really got to we've really got to start to reach and get into the communities that are getting engaged in this digital and tech space and all these things, and make sure that they have a foundation. And I can't say it any other way. It's no way for us to continue, even though we're going into this whole internet space, and we've seen what has happened during COVID. It is like critical that we slow down and really kind of reach back and educate and bring people forward to where they need to be, or we're headed for a real train wreck. And that's what I see, is a real train wreck happening, because our consumerism has moved from, unfortunately, the physical things that we do right now, because we haven't learned any better, to the metaverse. And people are talking about buying all these clothes and this furniture and all these things, and they don't even have their real world things together. So I think what we've managed to do is bridge that gap between the reality and the virtual, and then really trying to help back them up to understand, so that they can move forward knowing what they know, and making better decisions, because it is detrimental to our community what we see right now. And just last but not least, we hear a lot of our government, as well as other I don't want to say VC owners, but some of the traditional companies are really talking about ensuring that our community is safe from scams and those sorts of things, and really starting to try and put the onus of investing for just regular everyday people back to accredited investorship. And I just have to say that education is the best consumer protection that we're going to have. And I think that any companies that are coming up that are starting to really, we got to focus on community, and we got to focus on them getting an understanding and them doing the right thing, using the right tools. So I hope that helps. And that's what we've been working on really hard.
Thank you so much for your contributions to the community. I mean, you said it best. The need for education and the necessity of it cannot be overlooked. And even when you brought up things like being an accredited investor, which has been a barrier to many people of color in wanting to engage in riskier assets, it is important to have that education to be able to gain that distinction. And even if it's not present in the crypto and blockchain space, education is really empowerment. And at the end of the day, generational wealth is a mindset, and it is a mindset that pervades every single individual decision you make on the day-to-day. So the work that you're doing is so important, to be hands-on, to curate it to the community. It's absolutely essential. So thank you so much. Over at Harlem Capital, we actually have a series called Crypto in Color, where we do series of dinners to be able to bring people together of all knowledge levels to help them understand crypto and blockchain. We always say the best way to learn is through conversation, but it's only one piece of the pie. So we continue to think about partnerships with people like yourself, Naja, who are really doing the work every single day of creating sustainable models of education for large scalable communities. So before we wrap up, one of the things we wanted to talk about was just some brief advice for entrepreneurs, because as we can see, whether it's building in Africa, whether it's working in the digital world, working in crypto and blockchain, or in AR, VR, and the metaverse, the world is changing very rapidly. And what raising in the VC environment looked like even 10 years ago is very different from what it looks like today. So I would love to have all of you just go around and maybe drop a line of advice that you would give to entrepreneurs in terms of how you see the world changing and what they need to do to be prepared for it. And maybe we can start with you, Melissa.
Great. Really appreciate the conversation. So I think there's two things. This, from my perspective, has not changed, although the world is changing, which is know your numbers. I say that over and over again, but I think I see a lot of entrepreneurs who outsource this activity. You have got to know your numbers. World history is much more complicated than math because 2 + 2 is always 4. World history is changing depending on the author. So I really encourage entrepreneurs to be comfortable with numbers and own them, because those numbers, those budgets are a manifestation of your values and helps me understand as an investor where you're trying to take this company. So that's number one. And I think because of what's happening in the world, inflation, markets changing, VCs needing to do different things around asset allocation, you've got to be able to pivot and know what are the different maturations of your numbers based on external strategy. I think the second thing is be mindful that with the increased number of Black GPs, in particular, over $300 billion in 2020 alone went to Black GPs, does not automatically mean, more money for Black people, just any type of business. What it means is the opportunity has increased, but your rigor and your diligence and how you show up and your preparedness is even more paramount, because that is the highest level of, Marlon is a pioneer, but that's the highest level of dollars any of us has ever seen. And if you want us to continue to have access to those dollars, then we need you to continue to perform, if not overperform, because there's money given to us by LPs who are watching a very fragile market because of the economy and because of the pending war, that we never know what's going to happen. And so those dollars, while they're more readily available, even more critical, because we as Black GPs are under a different level of scrutiny around our fiduciary duty related to those. So we need our folks to step up and be prepared to receive those dollars.
Melissa, I could not have said it better. When it comes to the diverse community, especially Black people, we will not be biased against you, but we will hold you accountable and we will tell you to come correct every single time. So thank you so much for that. Marlon, I would love to hear your thoughts about how the world is changing, or like Melissa did, how it's staying the same, and the ways that diverse entrepreneurs can be prepared.
Tona, I had one rule in my writer for this panel, and it was to not follow Melissa ever. Y'all couldn't even do that for me. But seriously, she said a lot. I guess the only thing I would add to that is, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Business fundamentals are always going to be at the forefront for any investment that an investor is looking at. And great companies will get funded in all environments, period. Right. So the best thing that entrepreneurs can do is to keep taking steps forward, one foot in front of the other. Always be building, always be creating, always be moving forward, because the only thing that will guarantee you an investment at some point in your entrepreneurial career is that you've built something of value that others see as something of value.
Thank you so much. I have to say, the way that you guys' opinions pair so well together, it's just, the sum of the whole is better than the individual parts, I have to say. So thank you to the both of you for such wonderful synergistic perspectives. And I guess we can kick it over to Martina. You're seeing the world change every day. So what do you think diverse entrepreneurs can be prepared to raise in the new environments that you're building?
Well, I couldn't agree wholeheartedly enough with everything that's been said. Melissa and Marlon has spot on. I would just add, beware of buzzwords. I think particularly since the metaverse has become such a buzzword, I see so many pitches where metaverse is just slapped on, and that can be a real red flag. And so if you're going to use any of the many buzzwords that are out there today, make sure you really understand why you're using that and how it relates to your fundamental business. I think that back to fundamentals is just so important. And the other quick thing I'd say is just invest in your peer network, meet other founders, build friendships, build strong relationships, because having that peer network and people who can really understand what you're going through will be essential as the hard times on the entrepreneurship roller coaster set in.
Absolutely. And I think we've seen the same thing with Web3. We always say sometimes Web3 marketing, but Web2 infrastructure underneath. And I think, Martina, it also goes to support what Melissa said, that some things don't change. And when it comes to building networks, it's just as important to build horizontally as to build upwards, because at the end of the day, when you get to that pinnacle of success and look around you, it's not going to be the people who you're trying to win over who were older than you or more seasoned than you in the industry. It's going to be your peers who are pulling for you and sitting with you at the table. So always a great reminder for everybody. And Naja, would you mind wrapping it up for us in terms of how you're seeing the world change and how diverse entrepreneurs can prepare?
Well, you put me behind the triple M's. I'm looking at this, Melissa, Marlon, and Martina. They did an incredible job. Melissa nailed it at the beginning. So basically, I just want to speak, I guess, to those that might be going out seeking venture capital fund. I just want to say to them, be true to who you are, be true to your business plan and what it is that you're trying to do. And I would just caution, because I've seen a lot of people try to tweak and change their business model to fit what someone else is looking for. And I just say, keep going, be who you are, stay true, never give up. And one of the things that I constantly say to myself, you may not be there yet, and I'm talking to me, but you are closer than you were yesterday. So just keep going, keep striving, keep educating, keep doing all the things that you do, because when you do what you love, you will never work a day in your life. And so that's it for me.
Absolutely, Naja. I love that. I mean, the point exactly that you said about you may not be there today, but you're closer than you were yesterday. I think I always add that little bit at the end about, and you might not know if tomorrow is the day where you're going to reach the goal. So just keep going and keep pushing. I always like to end every panel that I moderate with a fun lightning round. So I know we are all so wise and we have so many perspectives to give, but I'm going to ask all of the panelists to keep their answer to one word and one word only. Please complete this sentence. The future of the world is blank. And Marlon, I will let you go first.
Rich.
Amen. Melissa.
Black.
Amen to that as well. Naja?
Me.
Yes, we love, honestly, rich and black and you all intersect. And Martina?
Right.
Right. Well, you heard it here first. The future of the world is black, rich, Naja, and it's bright, which I think all of those words describe you and everybody on this panel so well. Thank you so much for the diverse perspectives that you've brought today and for sharing time with this summit. We are very, very grateful to have been here and to have heard your insights. And we hope that we will all be working together more and more in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.